Hello everyone and welcome to the Waffle Flower channel. It's Shannon here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a simple watercolor galaxy scene. I've got this Flora Cat Dream stamp set. I'm going to be using this stamp set exclusively today. I'm going to use that kitty, sentiment, and the stars from that set. I'm using the Lacy Layers 5x7 dies today, mainly that largest die there. I'm going to use that die to cut a panel of watercolor paper down to 5x7. Now that Lacy Layer die is awesome because it also adds a little stitched border all around the edges. Also, with watercolor paper, there's typically two sides, a rough side and a smooth side. I'm going to be stamping on this today, so I want to make sure I'm using the smooth side. And this is a Strathmore watercolor paper. I have a grid of acetate that I made myself, and I'm just using that to help me position my stamps, just to be extra sure that they are straight and in the center. So I've got the sentiment, which is Dream a Little Dream. I've got that out, and I'm pulling out some of the stars. Well, actually I'm going to use all the stars. There's even a little moon. I'm going to pull that all out and kind of encircle the sentiment with all those stamps. And these again are all from that Flora Cat Dream stamp set. And now just once I get it all fine-tuned, I'm just going to fold over my MISTI and pick it up. And I will stamp these in embossing ink, and then I will emboss them in white embossing powder. So I'll basically doing a resist today with my embossing. So there's my embossing ink, just going to stamp that. And then I'll pour on my embossing powder. And I'm just using a white embossing powder. This is a Recollection brand, but you can use whatever you have. And I did recently just finally transfer over to storing the embossing powders that I use frequently in Tupperware, and I really like that. I don't know why I haven't done that before, but it's really saves me a lot of time. And I'm also, right now, I'm just kind of doing a little bit of cleanup. I think I had a hair attached to my stamp, so I ended up getting some embossing powder in a place I didn't want it to be. And I'm going to use my pin tool here in just a minute and clean another little goober that I have on the sentiment. That way I just have really clean, crisp, perfect letters. Okay, so now that's all ready to heat set. So I cut here because I just wanted to make sure my heat gun was really nice and hot before I approached my stamped images. That will reduce the warping you get if you make sure your heat gun is nice and hot. And I just heat set the sentiment and the stars. Now I'm going to pull the cat off from the Flora Cat Dream stamp set. This cat is like sleeping. She's so beautiful. She's got all these intricate flowers and designs on her. I really love these sets, and I love reactivating the ink with these sets, which I will show you today as well with this card. So I'm going to stamp her in two inks. I'm going to use Distressed Inks today. I'm starting with Salty Ocean, which is a blue, and I'm going to partially ink this cat in this Salty Ocean. So she's probably about a little bit less than 3/4 of the way inked up. And I'll fold her over and stamp her down. And I'm going to ink her up and stamp her again. This is just to make sure I get a nice, clean, crisp image. And then I will stamp the rest of her in Fired Brick, which is a red color. Now I chose these distressed inks because they match the watercolors that I'm using today, and I just found it was easier to make my inks match my watercolors than try to make my watercolors match my inks. So now I'm using this Fired Brick and I'm inking up the lower portion, the part I haven't inked up in Salty Ocean. And I am being careful here not to get that red overlapping too much with that blue, because when they overlap they create kind of a brown or black color, which I just don't like so much. So I'm trying to reduce that and not have too much overlapping. Okay, so that's all stamped. Now it's ready to start doing some watercolor. So I've got my panel taped down with painter's tape on just a piece of cardboard, And I've got my semi-moist watercolors here. This is just a cheap set that you can get, and basically anywhere. And I'm going to start by freehand making basically a galaxy dream bubble. So it's going to be 3 little dream bubbles above this kitty, and I'm just freehanding the largest one, which is encircling the sentiment and the stars that I stamped and embossed earlier. And I am using a water brush, which means it has a cavity attached to it that holds water, and as you squeeze, it releases water. So I squeezed water over the blue paint to make it liquid, and now I'm just picking it up and just kind of fine-tuning and making that edge a little stronger. And now I'm going to do the smaller bubbles above the kitty. I'm just going to do 2 here, 2 smaller ones. The first one will be a little bit bigger, and the second will be the smallest. So 3 in total. And I'm just fine-tuning, just kind of making it a little bigger and making some of the edges a little sharper. So I've got that towel there. You can use a paper towel. I'm cleaning my brush. So to switch colors, I'll clean my brush, squeeze a little water if I need to, and then move on to my next color. That way I don't get blue on the red, because I get blue and red together. I'm going to get a purple, or really actually more of a brown when they kind of mix with these. There you can see it mixing a little bit there, and it does kind of muddy it up a little bit. So I'm trying to avoid that as too much. A little bit is okay, because I like the variation in the colors, but too much kind of looks drab. Alright, so now I'm putting on, so I made like 3 little blotches of red, and now I'm going around the red with a purple, and I'm just using this purple as like a transition color between the red to the purple and then onto the blue. So the purple is going to be a transition between the red and the blue. And I'm going around the red with that purple, not mixing too much right now. I will do more of that after I get this color applied. Now I'm going to add more blue, and the blue is just going to fill in all those white spaces. So going all around with that blue. And right at this point, my paper is fairly wet. I mean, all the whole surface inside that dream bubble is wet right now. So now the paint is still very liquid, and I can kind of go in and mix and play and move the colors around and kind of mix them. What I'm doing is softening that transition between the 2 colors. So by kind of mixing those areas where they're right adjacent to each other, it kind of mixes the color and it makes like a blend between those 2 shades and kind of softens that transition. And this is not perfection here. I'm not worried about like a perfect smooth transition. A little variation is totally fine, because this looks more organic when it has that little mixing and play of the colors going on too as well. And if I do get too much mixing where I get the colors kind of muddy, I don't want to keep moving that muddied paint that is on my brush. I don't want to keep moving that around, because that's going to make the whole thing brown. So if I ever get too much mixing going on, I go over to my towel and I clean my brush, and then I go back. And sometimes I'll even go and add more color just to keep it more red or more purple or more blue back onto my paper, just to make sure I'm keeping the colors intense and bright, because I don't want it to be muddied. A little mixing, fine, but mixing all over and basically creating one brown blob is definitely not the goal here. So now I've moved on. I'm happy with my galaxy scene, and I moved on to reactivating that distressed ink. So right now I've got a clean brush. There's no ink or no paint left on my brush, and I'm just going over with my water brush, just with water, and reactivating that stamped distressed ink and moving it around and putting it the places that I want it to go. And this is kind of like watercoloring some of the places that I stamped. We'll be adding blue like shades to the kitty and her arms, and I'll even be doing it over the flowers and leaves that are the leaves designs that are on the cat. Now I'm going to do the red portion here. I made sure to clean my brush before I moved to the red, because if I carried on with some of that blue that was still on my brush, I'd be making brown again. So here's where I'm being very careful as well, not to mix too much that blue and red together, or otherwise I'm going to get a muddy color. So if you find that when you're painting it's starting to get kind of brown and muddy, go clean your brush and then go back to blending the colors out. So basically I'm just picking up some of the ink that's stamped and moving it over to color like the whole flower, like I did right there with the red. And I'll move over just the color. So it's very, very simple to do, and honestly it's just so perfect for these Flora cats. I just love doing this reactivating ink with these kitties. I think they look so beautiful. They're like little China cats. I think they're gorgeous. Okay, so that's all done. I've got to let that dry now. Basically the kitties dry already, but I got to let the my Galaxy dry. So now I'm just showing you how I do a little bit of cleanup. I found this to work the best for me to clean up any paint that's left on my my embossing. If I had been more careful too, I would have saved myself a little bit of time. If I had you can kind of do a little cleanup too while it's still wet. You can kind of do this. Basically, you take your brush and you just kind of pick up. You have it as dry as you can get it, the water brush, and you just pick up the paint and then wipe it on your paper towel. But for today, what I'm doing is I'm just getting the letters a little wet and then dabbing with my towel over the letters to pick up the paint that's on the letters. Pretty easy, but you don't want to take anything, you don't want to take something like a baby wipe that's wet and then try to clean your embossing, because that's going to smear all that watercolor. So don't do that. To make sure it's dry and you're careful with water when you use it to kind of clean up your embossed areas. Okay, so I just took my panel off of my board. That's all I did there. Removed the painter's tape, and now I'm just applying some tape adhesive on the back. Yes, I got some more tape adhesive. Hooray! And now I'm going to zoom out here and take my watercolor panel, and I will mount it on a 5x7 piece of, or 5x7 card base. Now this was a 10-inch by 7-inch rectangle, and then I folded it in half. I folded it at 5, and then that makes a A7 card or a 5x7 card. And you can do this from a 8.5 and 11 piece of paper. So you can do it from your standard piece of paper. Alright, so now I'm showing you what I like to do for the last accent. After I've got my panel stuck down to my card base, I like to take my white gel pen and just draw in some more like specks and even some stars to kind of really finish that galaxy scene. This little step does add quite a lot, really finishes it off and really pushes that galaxy look even further. And the nice thing about this, if you've never tried a galaxy scene before, you find it kind of intimidating, this small little space, doing something like a galaxy dream bubble or something like that, kind of reduces your anxiety, because you just have a smaller space to work with, so you don't have to worry about covering a whole thing. So I say, if you're worried about it, if you have any, I actually had some anxiety doing a galaxy scene. They look so, they're always, the ones that you see online are always so impressive, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. But start small and give it a try and play around a little bit with it. Get to know your watercolors. That will help you a little bit. See how they mix. That's the biggest thing, is know how your watercolors mix and see, and be careful not to mix it too much where you make brown. That's, I think, the biggest key. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching my video today. If you have any questions about the products I use, please visit waffleflower.com, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.